92 to 95 FM, 810 medium wave, and on digital radio. BBC Radio Scotland.
You're listening to Good Morning Scotland. It's 24 minutes to 8. It's been described as the worst treatment disaster in the history of the NHS. Between 1970 and 1991, around 6,000 people became infected with hepatitis C after receiving blood products from the NHS. Another 1,500 were infected with HIV. Most had been receiving treatment for haemophilia. More than 2,000 are since believed to have died.
Well, the Scottish Government ordered its own investigation into the contamination scandal some 8 years ago, but until yesterday, the UK Government had resisted demands for a full public inquiry.
The victims and their families have suffered pain and hardship, and they deserve answers, and the inquiry will give them those answers, so they will know why this happened, how it happened. This was an appalling tragedy, and it should never have happened.
Well, the Prime Minister's announcement may have been unexpected, but it was nonetheless welcomed by campaigners who fought a long-running battle to secure that the truth comes out. The solicitor Des Collins represented more than 400 of those who were affected.
A deep sense of relief that after so long and such a hard struggle that the families now believe that there will be an inquiry. A sense of unreality, it's all happened very suddenly after a long period of wait, and a creeping sense throughout the afternoon of anguish and sadness that a lot of the people who did campaign for this inquiry are now dead.
The Scottish Government have also welcomed the announcement of this inquiry, but speaking on our News Drive programme last night, the Health Secretary, Shona Robertson, expressed some surprise that its remit is expected to extend north of the border.
It appears to be a UK inquiry and therefore will apply to Scotland, but there are a lot of questions to be asked and answered, given that we've already had a very detailed inquiry through Penrose, and therefore we need to understand how this might add value to the Penrose inquiry, given that such a lot of time and indeed resources have gone in to this inquiry. But we also, we'd want people in Scotland who have been affected to have a voice in the UK inquiry, so we need to get clarification on that, and I would be seeking that with ministers as quickly as possible. Well,
the precise details of this UK-wide inquiry are as yet unclear, but Bill Wright, who's the chairman of the Haemophiliac Scotland campaign group, told BBC Radio Scotland that victims and their families will have varying views on what they want to get out of the process.
Money's not necessarily the most important thing for those individuals. Some people just want to see what actually happened. They want the truth, and I think after the passage of 30, 40 years that's likely to be extremely difficult, particularly when key individuals, whether doctors, officials or even ministers in government, including Mrs Thatcher, are not actually going to be around to give evidence.
Well, we're joined now by Lindsay Bruce, a senior lawyer with Thompsons Solicitors, who represents a number of clients affected by the contaminated blood scandal here in Scotland. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What's your reaction, first of all, and what will your clients' reaction be, do you think, to this new UK-wide inquiry?
I think they have some concerns as to how it'll be run, how it'll go forward, and what answers it can actually give them. It's a scary process when any type of inquiry comes, because you don't know what's going to come forward. And I think it's generally welcomed, although the experience of the Penrose was not always a positive one for many people which were involved. There was calls at the end when it was published in 2015 that it was a whitewash, only giving one recommendation. That inquiry was on for 6 years. You have to look back at the history in Scotland, and it was 2006 when the Health Committee first recommended a public inquiry, and then the SNP manifesto in 2007 said there should be one, and then it wasn't until 2009 the Penrose inquiry was set up, and then it took up until 2015 for it to be published, and it brought one recommendation, which was do a look-back exercise, look back and find people who may have been unknowingly infected and living with one of the conditions. That wasn't really good enough for many people who were involved in the Penrose inquiry.
With regard to that one recommendation in the Penrose inquiry, how do you understand that to be progressing?
I spoke out in March 2016 because many of my clients were saying to me that there was not many efforts to locate and to find those that had been infected. I understand that it has picked up pace now, but we're now in 2017, some 2 years from. I would have hoped that either during the inquiry more effort had been made to, it's a natural position. Would you not want to find those that had been infected by something that you know has happened? Why did it take a recommendation to happen, and then why is it still going on 2 years after that recommendation was made? It seems strange to me.
And do you feel that, given that background, after all this time, do you think that this UK-wide inquiry is likely to uncover anything further, beyond the findings of the Penrose inquiry?
I would hope so, but my concern relates to the passage of time. Documents will have been destroyed through natural time, memories fade, people may not be available, they may be too ill to give evidence, and I think that's a huge concern as to what success can an inquiry or a panel have, a judge-led or a panel have in bringing forward more answers.
And how frustrating is it that, given the UK and the Scottish governments both apologised 2 years ago, and yet it has taken since then for this UK-wide inquiry to be launched?
My clients are at a loss as to why it's taken so long, and they're also at a loss as to why there has to be the victims. Why is the onus on the victim to always push to find answers for something which has happened to them and they live with a terrible health status day in, day out? Now treatments have moved on, so you could now potentially be cleared of things like hepatitis C, but that wasn't always the case, and to some it was a death sentence, and it can have quite disastrous health effects. And I think with the passage of time, you would have thought that more would have been done earlier, rather than wait. This was happening in the 1970s and 80s and up to sort of 91. We know there's 30,000 people infected across the UK. Apologies were made 2 years ago, and here we are now talking about again having another inquiry or panel-led inquiry into situations.
Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. That's Lindsay Bruce, a senior lawyer with Thompsons Solicitors. It brings the time to 17 minutes to 8.